let's begin the discussion. What opportunities does a strategy for the Middle East and North Africa as a whole create for data center investors? Our speakers, Priyanka Nagpal, Tahir and Roshan Patel. Before we delve into the discussion, Roshan, starting with you, could you tell us a little bit about your professional background and a bit about your organization? 2 minutes each for every speaker.
Yeah, thanks for having me. So my name's Roshan Patel. I'm an engineer at Red Engineering. I lead the Middle East team who specialize in designing data centers. So I have the fortune of leading some of the most complex jobs in the Middle East. So some of the largest data centers in the region across UAE, Saudi, and North Africa. Just a bit about Red. So Red specialize in data centers. We develop and design data centers across the globe. So we have offices in Europe, APAC, and the Middle East. And yeah, we're seeing incredible growth in the Middle East at the moment.
Tahir.
Thank you. We are datacenterHawk. We are a global research company focusing into digital infrastructure assets as data centers, a particular class. We are a company based out of US, being established 10 years ago, and most recently we are expanding across EMEA and APAC for the last 3 years. Myself based in Dubai, we've just launched last month 8 markets across GCC, Saudi Arabia, Jordan and Israel, and we are launching our new market research for Turkey next month, and next year by Q2, 28 countries covering entire Africa region. Little bit about my background. I work for technology companies as such, Hewlett Packard Enterprise and Ericsson, building their digital infrastructure assets and working as a data center advisor. I've done data center advisory with Knight Frank, MENA in the region, and most recently helping datacenterHawk to expand their research platform in our region. Thank you.
Priyanka, what's your origin story?
That's an interesting question. So Priyanka Nagpal, data center lead for consulting for Middle East and Africa region at JLL. Original story is a bit different. I started with electronics engineering and then was working with software for a very brief period earlier in my career. And then I realized this is not something that is holding my interest, and that is how I did my master's and started my career in real estate. Been in real estate for over 12 years and specifically in data centers for 6 years now. And at JLL, how we are looking at the practices globally, we have a 200 plus specialized data center team, which look after all functions, right from consulting, where anyone is looking at market entries, to go-to-market strategies, to the entire life cycle of data centers, to projects, to running and operating data centers for you. So I think this is the broad level of plethora of services that we offer in the data center domain.
Perfect. Thank you so much for those introductions. Let's dive right into our first question. Now, historically, data center investments in the Middle East and North Africa have been very country-specific. What would be the main advantages of a region-wide strategy? And why is it that now the timing is right? Priyanka, you want to start us off?
Sure, definitely. I think the outlook from investors is changing quite rapidly. I do not have customers now or clients coming to us and saying, I want to build a data center in Dubai, or I want to build a data center in Cairo. Currently, we are looking at investors coming and approaching and saying, how do I leverage on MENA as a data center investment opportunity? And that changes everything. So now you do not, rather than investing $100 million in one country, you are finding investors looking at billion-dollar portfolios where you are diversifying the risk.
I read the headlines. It's insane. Every month somebody comes and gives $1 billion, $2 billion, $5 billion to some project here in the Middle East. And those numbers are mind-boggling.
So largely now you're talking about portfolio investments in the region, which is definitely a very good aspects of risk diversification as well. For example, you have a data center in a country, and the country is looking at a geopolitical risk. You have your data center running in another country. Or if you're facing some challenges in data sovereignties, you would have it running in another country. So you are risk diversifying, and you're looking at different aspects, and your data center is up and running.
How about you, Tahir? What have you observed?
I mean, I definitely agree with her. I think we have seen a bit more fragmented expansions, predominantly focusing in UAE and KSA, and now it's not about building in Tier 1 Middle East markets, it's actually expanding into Tier 2 markets, and because the scale of AI and the cloud expansions are not actually a matter of if, it's all about matter of when, and it's happening right now. We've seen a lot of discussions around merging new operators, some consolidations is now in the horizon, and the numbers are massive. Just recently, the capacity which has been announced across KSA is about 7 gigawatt. So I think the projection is there, so the investors and hyperscalers were very realistic to utilize the cheap power, the regulatory environment, the availability of sovereign funds, and the demand are still by 90% owned by hyperscalers, which I am hoping to see that this is going to change and evolve a little bit similar to what's happening in Europe and in US, where enterprise demand is playing a 50% of overall demand. So it's evolving, it has got its own speed with its own risks, but it's all about when it will happen, not if it will happen.
Roshan, what would you say are the main advantages of a region-wide strategy, and do you think the timing is right?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Tahir. Scale is the key word. There was a talk earlier about learning from mature markets, so I think we're still relatively an immature market if you compare ourselves to Europe or the US or China or India. We need to look at those markets. So it's more about how do we market the Middle East as a whole to the potential hyperscalers. What makes us more attractive than those guys? You know, is it a cost certainty, power availability, land availability? And at the moment, like Tahir said, it's fragmented. So Saudi is doing their own thing. The UAE, not just UAE, but different emirates within the UAE. So, you know, if I go to Abu Dhabi, there's separate legislation to Dubai and Ajman and Ras Al Khaimah. So it's all separate. At the moment, if we want to market ourselves as the best place to be for investment of data centers, sort of a unified strategy between the Middle East and North Africa would help leverage that and help potential or prospective investors look at MENA as an overarching region as opposed to a single emirate where the risk may be potentially much higher if it's controlled by one specific group of people. So it's in all of our interests to grow. Like I said, we're still relatively small. So if you compare ourselves to, Tahir mentioned like Europe. So if you look at the flap sites, you know, that's something that we would want to develop here ourselves. You know, what does our flap site look like for the Middle East? How can we grow that there? So I think it's incredibly important for us to align ourselves at this early stage now.
Right. Tahir, I'd like to pick your brain now on something. We've seen economic blocs like EU and ASEAN and even GCC shape industries. In your opinion, what could a MENA bloc for digital infrastructure look like, and how do you think it would accelerate investment?
I think my peer Priyanka probably she mentioned about certain risks, which we have seen in the region around the regulation, tax, the power procurement processes, and the connectivity aspects. It has been heavily government subsidized, and now the scale are increasing, and we want to see more de-risk initiatives of the capitals because of obviously the basic math of cost of 1 megawatt deployments are between $7 to $12 million, excluding the shell and the land cost. And if the expansion is expected to achieve the numbers that we are targeting, they're definitely required to be to see more de-risking initiatives, both on tax, power, and connectivity. procurement processes. And that's actually possible through acting as a block, like what's happening in Europe. I know every country is very different. Every region is very different. I was in Riyadh a week ago. Last night I was in Kenya. Today I'm in Dubai. Although it's all Middle East and Africa, they are very, very different areas. So it has got their very unique value propositions. So I think it's an ecosystem effort need to be in place to outcome this challenge.
Roshan, do you think a MENA block could work? Could it accelerate investments in digital transformation?
I think it's a challenge to make it work. I think there's been similar initiatives elsewhere. So if you look at Europe, they've started the European Data Center Association a long while ago. But in terms of actual legislation and actions that have come from that, the sort of guidance, Tahir could probably speak better about the governance. But from an engineering standpoint, it's about the scale and achieving what investors want. So cheap power, land availability, potentially renewables. So the MENA block, if it was referred to as that, would need to put in a lot of governance and jurisdiction onto the data center market so it could align itself, because like I mentioned, it's fragmented at the moment. And the key is to try and get the hyperscalers to self-build in the region. At the minute, it's heavily dominated by developers who are leasing the space. So it's not at the same scale of these 1 gigawatt or multiple gigawatt data centers we see. I know there's things going on in Abu Dhabi and these rumors of other big developments, but the reality is in the US they're being built at speed. Same in Europe and same in APAC.
Perfect. Priyanka, I was wondering, which data center services or verticals, whether it's hyperscale, edge, AI-ready factories, or co-location, in your opinion, are most likely to benefit if investors adopt a regional lens rather than a national one? What do you think?
I think taking a step back now to echoing exactly what Tahir and Rehan said about, it's largely hyperscalers are definitely hands down the winners here from point of view of benefits, because whenever they talk about a region, they talk about regional strategy. They do not talk about country strategies. And then heading back to fragmentation. So that is a key hurdle or a bottleneck at the moment. And when we would be talking about MENA, MENA would be benchmarked to Southeast Asia, to Brazil, to India, markets where you are having 300 to 500 million population to cater to. When you work in silos, country to country, that might not be a right approach when you're targeting hyperscalers and also. So when you talk about MENA as a strategy, hyperscalers are definitely going to benefit because you're talking their language in terms of regional strategy and not just country by country strategy. Edge is a very interesting space to be looking at also. Definitely, you would be looking at a 14 million around people catering by putting strategic edge POPs in 3 to 10 locations, which would be driving the growth for edge. Co-location, AI again is huge benefit because GPU clusters are expensive. If you're having cross-border data sharing for these costs,
True.
I think it's huge. So they would benefit. Co-location, I think, is a bit tricky. Why? Because you'll have to localize and go as per the local laws of data sovereignty, as well as there are many multinational co-location or multinational companies who are going for co-location. So I think that also in a way benefits.
I see. You want to add to that, Tahir?
Yeah, I think from the hyperscaler and AI-ready requirements definitely are the core of the entire demand. But maybe just reversing the entire conversation here into the cost of deploying into cloud platforms for any enterprises. As long as we see the demand is driven by hyperscalers, probably this question will never be in our list. But if you want to see a strategic evolution, I think the cost of cloud deployments should be in the picture. A lot of people still discussing the fact that having an on-prem facilities operation and capex cost in the short term is more heavier than having a long-term cloud deployment strategy. But we know that there's also some additional charges where cloud operators charging for trainings, for certifications. So I see a long way also which falls under the shoulder of the CTOs. We consultants and service providers and experts need to discuss with CTOs in this region to really try to understand what's the bottleneck of their decision-making process on how we can see more hybrid and cloud deployments happening.
Thank you. You want to add to that, Roshan?
Yeah, it's mainly to echo Priyanka's point. I think AI factories, or whatever they're being referred to these days, are enormously expensive, and the capacities are becoming unfeasible. So usually when a client or investor comes to Red, they would give us a land parcel and we'd look at maximizing how many racks or the power they can get out of that land plot. If you did that activity today compared to 5 years ago, you'd end up with multi-gigawatt sites. It's just not real. So if that is to become in the future, these multi-gigawatt sites, there's no single nation. These single nations are not going to want to do this. The cost of construction is one thing. The cost of buying, 20,000 of these GPUs to sit in all these racks is another thing. And we looked at some case studies in Q8 where it was very similar. The cost of the construction was enormous, but the cost of populating the actual data center to provide the compute or to provide the AI machine learning inference was off a different scale. So if one day, a Microsoft, Facebook, or someone comes into the region and says that we want to develop our new large language model in the region, potentially smaller countries or smaller nations, especially in North Africa, they would not have the resources or the want to do this because it is just of a completely different order of magnitude of investment. And that obviously comes with requiring the power as well. So you can see Europe struggling with power, and they have a very, very well interconnected grid system. We don't have an interconnected grid system, anything like Europe, and we're much smaller in terms of our geographical footprint. So it'd be massively beneficial to sort of pool resources here.
So clearly there are huge advantages, but Priyanka, I wonder, would you say there are some challenges that could hold back a unified MENA digital infrastructure strategy? What could hold us back?
I think 3 key challenges that I see would hold back the digital MENA strategy. I think first and foremost would be data sovereignty. So each and every country, government wants to keep the local data locally. I think then that defeats the whole purpose of a regional strategy. So that is a key aspect. If you're seeing data sovereignty laws, even within UAE, you would have different data sovereignty laws for Dubai as compared to a data sovereignty law for Abu Dhabi. So this whole thing about data sovereignty is one aspect to look at. The second most important aspect, I think, that needs to be looked at is also skill gaps. You talk about building a data center, okay, but it doesn't end at building data center.
True.
It is very technical, and you need specialized technical specialists to operate these data center facilities and who understand and talk the language of data centers. I think so that is also a key hurdle to be looked at, or a key challenge that could be looked at solutioning. And the third and the foremost is political risk. So
Geopolitics, I know. It's the headlines are sometimes just so terribly depressing. And I say that as a journalist.
So geopolitical risk is again something that I think investors need to factor in. when they are looking and exploring this, because I think this is the talk of the town now. Your cross-border functions could overnight be stopped on these aspects. So these are crucial things to be factored in.
You want to add to that, Roshan?
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of challenges. I think these guys will cover the governance part, but from a building and design standpoint,
Right.
we have different legislation in different emirates of this one country, let alone between different countries and different continents. It's challenging to standardize these products, which is what hyperscalers are always after. They want a standard product that they can deploy from the US to the Middle East, and part of our job as design consultants is to sometimes localize those designs. But the initial point is that, you know, when AWS came to the region, I remember that they were confused that they had to change their fundamental design to suit Dubai, Abu Dhabi, and they're going through that activity now in KSA, and it doesn't leave a sour taste, but it's not conducive to building a strong relationship. So going forward, the unifying of things like building codes and the regulations, and like I mentioned earlier, if you look at Europe again, European Data Center Association has these benchmark design guidelines, benchmark building guidelines, and that way, when a big hyperscaler goes into Europe, they know that there's this organization, although not governmental, that implements these sorts of these not restrictions but guidelines on what is permissible to build a data center. If you look at it now, even in, I know there's major hotspots in Abu Dhabi and Dammam and Dubai, to build the same data center from one client in those three regions, they would look different fundamentally right now. And that's at a sort of design level. From a higher level, one of the first things we look for on land acquisition and advisory is power availability. We would want there to be a MENA grid or some sort of diversification of the grid that isn't country specific, because that's what generally would de-risk power. We're generally blessed that our power here is of a very good availability. But then if we were to team up with say the Egyptian power grid or something in North Africa, right, there's a complete mismatch. How would that work in terms of who takes responsibility? And there becomes the problem with joining up these dots.
I see. You want to add to that?
Yeah. I mean, I think the data sovereignty, I think the resilience in the investors' profile of the resources and talents are always will be top on the list, because we are talking about a developing market. And we're talking about a market which is trying to inject supply as much as possible to attract demands or to respond to the upcoming demands. But I think we need to think more in terms of ecosystem. There are various different parties in the life cycle. There are definitely vendors where when you speak with them, they will talk about the entire supply chain process. When you talk with end users, they will tell you about their stories around what is the challenge that they face when they deploy into the cloud. When you speak with hyperscalers, it's all about the right feasibility, the right site, the regulatory structure, the power procurement, the zoning, the permitting, and the ownership or the partnership model in place, and how the legal aspect is structured on it. And obviously the land bank owners. So it's all about an ecosystem which actually we need to talk. I think we need to start moving from developing phase into more how we will efficiently utilize this most recent commitments to see it's working properly. We don't want to face where the fragmented market continue, which could create a bit more polarized statements.
Thank you for that. Priyanka, how, in your opinion, might individual countries in MENA position themselves in a MENA-wide data center ecosystem? Are we likely to see competition, or will collaboration be the driving force here?
I think Competition is definitely going to be there, but how do you define competition? Is it a healthy competition? Definitely. Collaboration would be a broader play. If you want to succeed in MENA, you would definitely want to collaborate. When we talk about competition, you see different countries. So you see Dubai and Riyadh who are competing to look at which one would be the key or the primary zone to be defined as. This gets innovation in picture. So from this competition, you have innovation and you have, in a way, collaboration as well on lines of using different technologies and adapting to the changing needs. So I think that is one thing that you see at. When you're looking at countries like Egypt, now Egypt is positioning itself as a gateway to North of Africa. Similarly, UAE, you have positioning itself as a global hub. So now this is not competition, this is in fact specialization. So each and every country is taking its own niche and specializing in value add. So this is how the whole collaborative and healthy competitive framework is working for the digital MENA strategy.
Roshan, collaboration or competition? What are you looking at? What do you foresee?
Yeah, I think the optimist says collaboration, but the realist is it's incredibly competitive, the market. If you were just listening to the last talk, they are racing to provide the best cost to the end customer. It's very clear from the developers what they want to do. And that's why the developer section is sort of separate to the self-build. So, but even with self-build, they will want a cost-competitive market. And the long way, or the sustainable way to do that is through collaboration. At the moment, because we're still in the emergence, we have developers who are trying to drive down the cost so they make themselves more marketable for leasing the space. So at the moment, it's mostly competition in reality.
You want to add to that, Tahir?
I will add coordination, maybe, in between. I think it's a very natural cycle to see in developing environments, both collaboration and competition. As long as it's coordinated, I don't see it as a problem. We have been in contact with operators every quarter, asking them what are their live IT capacity, what are their planned and under construction capacity, and then we're putting the next question, asking how is your vacancy rate, how is your absorption rates last quarter, how much space you could rent it out, and then the next question is what's your kilowatt IT rack cost. I think all these are connected with each other, and all these are connected with different stakeholders, with different parties in the life cycle. So a coordination definitely required. We don't probably want to see two adjacent countries are cooperating unreasonably or probably competing unreasonably. So it's a level of coordination will be key to receive more resilience with the investments and to see more MENA as a block as we see in EU.
Thank you for that. Priyanka, in an era of mega economies, does MENA need a collective approach to gain global weight against regions like, say, APAC or North America and Europe in attracting hyperscalers? Because that is like one of the big draws, right?
I think, so we talk about globally how we are positioned. So North America, be it APAC, be it FLAP-D, when you look at these markets, these are ahead in the curve, they are more developed per se. For us to reach that stage right now when we are developing, I think it is now or never, and it is quick. That is how we should look at it, because going back to fragmentation, I think fragmented or country to country thing would not help us position ourselves when we're talking about APAC, when we're talking about FLAP-D, we're talking about North America, Brazil, India. I think we would have to look at MENA as a region and not a country by country specialization.
Tahir, if a MENA-wide digital infrastructure strategy does indeed succeed, how might it reshape the economic, social, and technological trajectory of the region over the next decade? What do you see in the crystal ball?
Yeah, so I think it's phases. It's moving phase by phase. I can give you some real-time examples. Then talking hypothetically, we have been receiving a lot of calls from AI companies based in US, which I have never heard about them before, asking a lot of questions about the Stargate project, about humane AI, and then this interest need to translate to something. And when we speak with the operators in the region, with ecosystem players in the region, explaining them the coordination that they need to have with us in order to have their portfolio available in our platform, so the entire ecosystem out of this region can see them. We need to understand that the 90% of the business still based in US, and still the biggest change driven, or the capital injections are just following the hyperscaler demands. So, and we need to build more partnerships and create more solutions which can feed the ecosystem itself. And we need to understand that as long as we are reaching out to a projection where we are freely and openly sharing our pipeline in terms of growth, in terms of the challenges we face, there will be more resilient investments in place. There will be more interest from global markets to these markets. Otherwise, it will be unrealistic to think we could utilize a 7 gigawatt capacity in a single country and have it fully utilized.
Roshan, you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think no one has a crystal ball, as the expression goes, but the growth in the last year and what we're seeing going forward is of an order of magnitude larger over the last. It's now on an inflection where it feels like we're going on a rocket ship, to be honest. But the main construction projects of what's actually real and materialized, you mentioned Stargate there, so a potential 5 gigawatt campus. These are now rivaling what is being done in the US, and we're very fortunate to have it in the region here, and that's been through the local governments having those connections. The sovereign wealth funds obviously have a huge place, a huge influence in what's going on and bringing business to the region, and we'll continue to bring business to the region, but it's more about how we can bring in external investment, not just what's local in terms of their own sovereign wealth funds, whether that's PIF, Mubadala, whoever it might be, to continue that growth. But at the moment, we're still on what feels to be a knife edge of moving up, given the large-scale developments. And similarly in Saudi, talking about Humane and those guys in Dammam. So they're also looking at massive increases in capacity. And we're fortunate, we have the power availability. If you're trying to build these things in the UK, Frankfurt, Singapore, there is moratoriums on securing power. Here we're able to quickly leverage renewables, nuclear. We have a large natural resource pool here available that we can leverage to allow and unlock the grid to provide new projects in the region. And that goes for North Africa as well.
Perfect. That brings us closer to the conclusion. Would you like to start us off with concluding remarks? Priyanka, 2 minutes for each speaker. Concluding remarks.
Sure. I think now we are not talking about smaller campuses. We are talking about 1 gigawatt plus campuses. When you're talking about projects like Stargate, Humane, I think these are game changers. This is what positions us as a region very strong, where globally there are very few gigawatt projects currently which are live or which are in a stage of planning. So I think when we are looking at this broad level of this huge investment in strategic vision of the government materializing now, I think MENA digital strategy is going to help streamline regulations. The example, we have EU regulations, we have APAC data center regulations. I think with that, with such large-scale projects coming in, we would definitely have streamlined functions and regulations coming in play in the region.
Perfect, thank you. Tahir, you want to go next?
Yeah, I mean, I can only tell that the coordination is very key in such scale of deployments, and we really want to see this across all parties in the ecosystem. When we speak with every single partner in our region, from operators to investors to end users to vendors, we always see the same challenges across developing in a new market, and I think we have moved that stage right now. So it's very exciting period for all of us. It's all about to continue coordinating and partnering with as much as players, and so we can achieve together.
Roshan, how about you? Concluding remarks?
Yeah, I think just going back to the original question of, what does it mean to connect as a MENA region to helping us enable or help promote the region for investors? I think either way, the region is promoting itself, whether that be individually as countries and nations, or otherwise. And I think collaboration will be far superior. But at the moment, if you look at individual countries like the UAE, KSA, some of the countries in Africa, they're promoting themselves. Whether it's through the 2030 strategy in KSA or the UAE policies on AI, they're promoting exactly what the hyperscales want to see. And that coupled with cheap power, land availability, all the things we look for in the first moments of site selection, the Middle East and North Africa has got a lot of those already ticked off. So we're in a good place, I think. And the only way is up.
We're in a good place and we're going up, up, up. I take it nobody here has watched K-pop Demon Hunters. My apologies. All right. Thank you so much, Roshan Patel, Technical Director, Red Engineering, Tahir Gok, Senior Real Estate Analyst, MENA Lead, datacenterHawk, and Priyanka Nagpal, Data Center Lead, Consulting, MEA JLL. Thank you for this wonderful discussion. Big round of applause, please.